Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tindall, a CPA with Dominion. We're a CPA firm that specializes in strategic tax advisory for financial advisor firms. And on today's episode, I have with me James Cantwell. He brings 25 plus years of investment management and wealth tech expertise. So we're going to be talking about wealth tech today. To his role as the founder of the Cantwell Advisory, which he established in 2019. His career spans leadership positions at GAMCO Asset Management, AST Trust Company, and SS&C Advent, where he led North American consulting for technology implementations. In 2024, he launched WealthTech Select, a platform helping RIAs evaluate and select technology solutions. And through both ventures with his advisory practice and WealthTech Select, James helps wealth management firms optimize their technology stack, improve efficiency, and enhance client service delivery. So thank you for joining me today, James.
No, thanks, Catherine. I'm excited to be here.
I'm like a tech stack nerd myself, and probably in the worst way because I dabble, but I'm not an expert at it. And I know like a lot of advisors, we all get intrigued and pushed by the shiny new objects. I know I think in a previous conversation we were talking about the Kits's tech map just blowing up. Like the new one came
Yeah,
out a couple of weeks ago, and it's just there are more and more and more and more tools out there now for everything. So this will be a good conversation. I'm sure you've over your span in the industry, it's a big shift, the amount of tools that are available now, right?
it is. Yeah, I mean, I think that's when I started a long time ago. We don't have to calculate exactly how long, but when I started a long time ago, there were only kind of a few major players. And if we talk about, I know this audience is largely traditional RIAs, but I also do consulting work with family offices and multifamily offices, and institutional asset managers and the like. And years ago, if we talk about, let's say, family offices, there weren't many family office specific platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And family offices were really forced to use asset and wealth management platforms and financial advisor platforms. And now the thing is, everybody has a specialized platform just for them.
Yeah.
So no matter your size, no matter your budget, there's something that will work for you. And that is awesome and terrifying because it's so hard to figure out what product is right for me.
Yeah. Yep. And on top
So,
of that, it's not even just what product is right for me today. It's what product is going to be right for me to build on for where I'm trying to go, which for a lot of advisors, in my experience, don't always know the answer to that second question. And so it can become okay, well, are we going to have to change platforms in 2 years? And what's this going to look like? Having to move all these households over and just the tech gremlins. Whenever you have any kind of switch, it's like count for double the budget and double the time kind of
yeah.
moves. So what are some of the mistakes that you've been seeing practice on the advisory side? What are maybe some common mistakes that you see RAs make when they're evaluating tech stack options, or things that might surprise them that they might not, they don't realize that are mistakes that they're making when it comes to some of these big decisions, because it's the engine for the business. So like it's easy to easy to have a pretty big problem develop if you're not
Yeah.
mastering this.
Yeah. No, I'll share one little bit of kind of something I learned, and then I'll dive right into what that mistake is, because I think there's one in particular. And so the first thing is to give everybody a little calm, and that's all the major products are pretty good. And
Mm-hmm.
I think firms overestimate how critical specific technology really is to their business.
Yeah.
It's really more about having good data quality, good process, and that your team is really utilizing the applications to
Yeah.
propel the organization forward. That's the more important thing. And people think tech's going to solve the problem, and that's not really it.
Mm-hmm.
Getting into your question specifically about, what problems do advisors make when evaluating software, is frankly, a lot of times they're going to start with the software first and not the pain
Yeah.
points that they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So a lot of advisors hear about a product, they're at an event, and one of their advisor buddies tells them that they just, started using a new financial planning tool or an estate planning tool, or they just switched CRMs, and it's so much better. And so the shiny object has the attention,
Mm-hmm.
and demos get started and it looks impressive, and they try and figure out how that product fits into their ecosystem instead of starting with what are the pain points that we're trying to solve, and
Yeah.
then let's go figure out what products fit nicely into our existing ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And that's something where like internally, I always tell people like on my side, on the accounting and tax side, it's a fairly similar business model to financial advisory in terms of its professional services, it's client service focused. There's workflows that we have to follow. There's a compliance technical element. There's a social element. And I've found like something we've done in the firm that I really liked was, just mapping out like here are the workflows in the client journey and what's going on and when different service points are happening. And then here are the tools that are executing the different pieces of that. Here's where some of them might overlap, but where in the system is happening on what. But really starting with the map of like, well, what's the ideal client journey? What's the ideal, way that this work is getting executed? And then we back into, okay, well, what tools are we going to use, and then try to minimize the number of tools as much as possible. Or it's something that's always a challenge is like keeping data integrity between programs too.
Yeah.
Like not
Well, that
having
might
somebody
be
show up as 4 people on different platforms when it's just one client, like those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, that might be pain point number 2, which is related to issue number 1, which is too many products,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think, and it makes sense how it happens. If you're a breakaway advisor, you're a startup advisor, you start figuring out what I need to run my business to just get the job done.
Hmm.
And then as issues arise, you look for a quick solution to that issue. And technology should definitely be part of that solution. But chances are, as a breakaway firm or a startup advisory firm, you're not thoughtfully designing a technology stack for the long term because you may not even know what that looks like yet.
Yeah.
So, what you're doing is you're piecing together different applications that are each solving a specific vertical issue, as
Hmm.
opposed to thinking about it complementary across your entire practice.
Hmm.
And so it makes sense that over time, I don't totally want to use this term, but you Frankenstein something together.
Hmm.
And at some point, you need to reflect and go, is this really the right setup? Or do I really have things that are hindering, my growth? And so that's really the time when you start wondering if you're wasting time or you're identifying integration gaps between different systems and you're finding yourself manually moving data, in other words, typing data from A to B or importing it from A to B, you've reached a Frankenstein point, right? Now, this
Yeah.
is the time to evaluate your technology stack and
Hmm.
determine, do I need better integration or do I need a different set of products?
Hmm. Yeah. What are some good, in terms of like practical waypoints, for people who, because I encounter a lot of firms where they break away, they get initial tech stack, maybe they're on, one big platform, and then over time they need to make changes. Like, what are some good maybe red flags or things people should have in mind for when they need to reevaluate some of these decisions in terms of, team size or pain point or frustration? Like, do you have like some general guidelines that you usually give people when it makes sense for them to reevaluate, or like how they could have a framework for a reevaluation?
Yeah, and frankly, some of it should be fairly obvious because a good example would be if you find that your team isn't able to prepare effectively for meetings,
Hmm.
then either it's because they're not taking good notes, it's because they don't have good tools that help them take the notes, it's because those notes never make it into a CRM, it's because that CRM doesn't potentially help you organize and prepare for that meeting or other tools. So you'll see the gaps when you find that like there's areas of your practice that are just wildly inefficient or underutilized.
Hmm.
If you use a CRM, then you should be able to easily track your prospects, easily engage with your customers, and that means over email, in-person meetings, etc. They should be able to easily schedule time with you. You should be able to easily schedule time with them. You should be able to know when it's time to engage with them and use your CRM to do that. If you're struggling with any of those things, it's time to reevaluate. But the thing I would say is it doesn't mean that it's time to reevaluate the technology you use. It just may be the way that you're engaging with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the most important thing is really to start with an analysis of your own house.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look internally and let's really start to get an understanding of where do things start to break down? Like, where does things bottle up when I'm onboarding a new client? Where do I have to fill out manual paperwork? Where, when I'm preparing for a meeting, do I find myself combing back through notes and information and trying to do, really prepare and organize myself? And I can't keep track of what did they say they sold their house for last year? And didn't they say they were going to increase the amount that they want to take out each month? And you don't have those things handy and you're combing through emails and things like that. When you see that these are the things that are happening, your process has got problems.
Yep.
And you always need to start with the process first.
Mm-hmm.
So it's now coming back and either doing it independently or working with consultants like myself, and there's plenty of other good ones out there that can help you look at your business and really evaluate, are you doing things efficiently? And then secondly, we then say, what do you need to do from a process standpoint to be more efficient? And then finally, we start introducing tech and going, what technology solutions solve these pain points now that we have a better process in place? Because people always look at technology as a panacea. They look as like, oh, if I switch CRMs, it's going to fix all these problems, right? I used an analogy today with a provider where we used an example where they wanted to switch portfolio management platforms because they didn't have good data. And the reality is you could go through the process of a big portfolio management platform switch, or you could look for a different data aggregator.
Yeah.
You could look at WealthTech or Bio Accounts or one of the many others that are out there that could supplement and provide better quality data as opposed to doing a full conversion of your portfolio management system.
Yeah.
But if you're looking on your own, you might get a demo and they go, well, yeah, we have coverage with Pershing and Wells and Schwab and some little boutique bank. And you're like, great, we're going to switch because you have everything we need. And it's like, well, that's a big expense. That's very disruptive. There's a large conversion. And did that really solve your problem most effectively and cost effectively, frankly?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point, because I see that tendency a lot of times. We're like, oh, well, this is going to be the thing that we're going to need for the next stage of growth. But it's like, well, really, that's not the bottleneck of what's going wrong. When you help people kind of work through the processes, it sounds like in terms of data visibility, like that's something that's, I think, probably one of the biggest challenges initially when an organization is maturing and professionalizing is well, how do we actually, once I'm not the advisor in all of the work, how do I actually see what's going on in a way that I can now manage things and know that my systems are talking to each other and have the kind of reporting infrastructure so that I know things aren't falling through the cracks. Could you speak a little bit to like how you work with people to figure that process out? Because I know that's a huge challenge of like, well, how do we actually measure client success? And like, how are we reviewing this? Like, how do we even see this? How do we get the data that we need to even be able to make the decisions around if there are problems in our process? What's your normal frame for going through that? Just a slight interruption in this conversation. I wanted to bring to your attention two things that are important for you to know. So we're always at the rhythms. So if you can subscribe to the show, that would mean a lot to me. Even more to me if you can leave a rating and let me know what you think about it. But we have a new newsletter that's coming out. It's going to be very active in 2025. That is specifically around tax issues that I'm seeing advisors face in their own practices, changes in legislations, and the pieces that I think are critically important for you to stay ahead of as an advisor with the new administration. So nearby, wherever you're interacting with this, will be the link of how to sign up for our newsletter. Also nearby will be the link to my LinkedIn, which is the best way to get in touch with me, learn more about what we're doing for advisors in the tax strategy and compliance work that we do, and also to get access to the various tools and interviews and things that I do, specifically designed to help you improve your practice, improve your own tax situation, etc. So let's get back to the episode, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and so this is actually a big part of kind of the first step of a consulting engagement when working with the Cantwell Advisory, and It's to really get to understand the business and how they wish to engage with their customers and how they measure success and how
Mhm.
they differentiate themselves,
Mhm.
right? In the financial advisory space, everybody's doing something similar, but each firm, whether true or not, believes they have their own special sauce, the way their own way of doing things. And so because of that, they may measure success a little bit differently. They may
Mhm.
work with a different set of clientele. And so the first step is, instead of dictating, here's the metrics for success and here's how we want to organize and structure your information, I really work with the owners and partners of the organization to understand how they measure success. What's really moving the needle forward for you?
Mhm.
And then let's make sure that the underlying data is structured in a way that we can actually give you that information. Because
Mhm.
a lot of times they're starting out with reports that were canned business intelligence reports or dashboards that came with the application they chose.
Yeah.
And maybe there was some degree of customization, but what they probably didn't give a lot of thought to is, how do I really structure the underlying data so that I can get the answers to the questions I want, so that I can know if my business is healthy?
Yeah.
So if you don't have a way of tracking the revenues really well and visualizing that, if you don't have a way of seeing how many new clients you're onboarding, seeing what makes up that demographic, see if it's aligned with the type of clientele you're going after, then you really don't know what's going on with your business. So it's getting to understand how they see their clientele, how they group them or think about them, how they envision success, and making sure that we've structured the underlying data to support that.
Mhm.
And then we'll build the visualizations, we'll build the reporting in whatever tool they use. And again, most tools are going to be able to do it. It actually comes down to the data more than the tool.
Mhm.
And it's real easy at this point, and it has been for many years, to add on different business intelligence tools,
Mhm.
which is not my go-to by any means, but it's easy enough to do that, like, it doesn't require you to switch applications because you're not getting good business intelligence. It
Yeah.
always starts with the data.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that's great. And for companies that are, maybe they've made it through that section, they've got the good, business intelligence reports, and they know, okay, this is what we're focusing on and what we need to do next. Maybe if you could speak through to like some of the kind of typical progressions that you see in firms when they kind of go through that journey of, okay, step one is like you just need eyes, like you need to know what's going on. What does step two typically look like, once they actually have eyes? Like how do you decide which projects are worth tackling, and which projects are okay, actually no, it makes sense for us to do a full platform change, versus like avoiding the Frankenstein the Frankensteinification. What's the typical
Yeah.
process you recommend people look at kind of once they can at least have visibility from, a
Yeah,
testing?
I mean, oddly enough, the process doesn't change. It's really the same methodology. It's just an iterative process. So
Mhm.
at this point, you still need to look at where time is being not utilized well.
Mhm.
You need to figure out if it's in your client onboarding, if it's in your prospecting or lack thereof. What are the things that are not allowing your business to accelerate, right?
Mhm.
So if we think about the goals of different businesses, there are some advisors that have reached a certain size and they're happy. They have a great work-life balance. They're not looking to grow a multi-billion dollar practice.
Mhm.
They're happy being the neighborhood RIA, and they just want to be a little more efficient. And for a firm like that, it's an entirely different evaluation process, and where we're looking to clean things up and make things just a little easier to use,
Mhm.
and maybe improve the customer experience a little bit,
Mhm.
than it is with a firm that is aggressively growing and trying to acquire books of business and really needs to scale.
Yeah.
So there's a very drastic difference in approach between the two, and where you're looking to make changes and how drastic they need to be.
Mhm.
I don't know if that really answers the question, but I think there's really different approaches based on the type of firm.
Yeah, well, maybe if we have a couple minutes, let's dig into it a little bit. So for like your, like you said, the neighborhood RIA, what's
Yeah.
what's framework that they should be having in mind when they're thinking about some of
Yeah,
those
so
changes,
not to tell them how to run their business, but chances are they're used to doing things
or just what you've
by
seen,
hand.
you know.
Yeah, that's fine. Um, but I don't mean to offend anybody. Um, no, where the neighborhood RIA, whatever size that is,
Mhm,
that wants to deliver that, hey, I know my customer, um, and have that real great relationship. That's important for an advisor of any size, frankly.
mhm,
But I think there's a lot of opportunity to do customization and
mhm,
provide that sort of white glove, I know you, via automation and integration with your existing tools.
mhm,
There's no real reason to 100% handcraft an email or a newsletter, that goes out with a statement to every single client. The
mhm,
tools that we have today, and this might kind of bring us into a little bit of an AI discussion, but like the tools that we have today really allow you to do a deep level of customization and dig into your client's history that you already have to
mhm,
write a really customized message that has a tone of the value you bring, the relationship that you treasure with that client, and can bring up some current events that are related to their portfolio, their investments, changes you made, etc.
mhm,
And you can have what's referred to as kind of a human in the loop process where you then validate and edit that. It's probably 95% of the way there or 100% of the way there, but
mhm.
you still put eyes on it. You still make sure it sounds like your tone, it sounds like you're happy with it, but it saves you a lot of time. And now, because of that, it doesn't mean that you're not providing this customized white glove experience. You feel like you're spending less time with the client. It's letting you spend more time with more of your clients. It's
Yeah.
letting you use your time more effectively. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for firms to not feel like they have to change what they're doing and lose their personal touch, but to actually do more of it by
Mhm.
leveraging automation to save time with some of these areas,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, that's a great point because somebody had a funny quote, which was, I want AI to do my laundry and my housework, not make art and poetry, right? And I think for a lot of advisors, especially with like the dawning of these different AI products, that's kind of some of the fear that comes in because initially that's what it seems to be the best at is, writing correspondence and mimicking human language and those kinds of things. But I think you have a really great point of being able to, you can implement tools like that, but keep the human in the loop, right? It's like you don't just
Mhm.
automatically send those out and it just really enhances you rather than
Yeah.
replacing you in any meaningful way. Like I think
I
we're quite a distance from that. But
I realize if when I talk about what's possible, I realize it's just like with any technology change or new technology, adoption's always gonna be a little bit slow. You have to
yeah,
build a comfort level over time.
yeah. Especially
And
with the
so
SEC, it's going to make adoption. It's going to take a while.
absolutely, and I know the last time you and I chatted, we talked a little about the SEC and FINRA,
Yeah.
and there's very significant, considerations with using these different tools, and happy to get into that too. But, uh, I described a workflow for a client that I'm currently working with, and it was taking something that today is 100% manual, and I basically described a workflow where we would generate all the statements at a push of a button. We would tailor a custom email. It would be in their outbox, and they would basically get a copy of it in Slack or Teams, and they could click a button, approve or deny, and we could put this in place in a very short period of time. And I saw them look back and like, but what if we didn't do all that? Like you could see the hesitation, and it's something that was going to make their life so much easier, and
Hmm.
they're just not there yet. Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I think it's going to take a little time to figure out how your firm wants to use this, how you want to impact your customer experience and the customer journey, what
Yeah.
value you want to present in front of them. And I think you
Hmm.
take small bites of the apple.
Hmm.
Right? I don't
Yeah.
think you have to go big. I don't think you have to start using AI tomorrow because it's a buzzword and everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
But I think there are really good use cases to figure out how to really use it as leverage to grow your practice or provide a better client experience.
Yeah. And also on top of that, not just providing that better client experience, but providing a better employee experience for your employees too. because
Absolutely. I mean,
they're the
employees
ones that
don't
are
like,
bearing a lot of the brunt of when there's a manual process, like they're having to field a lot of that. So that can be a huge benefit as you're trying to grow the practice or retain talent or ascend talent or improve profit margins in the business. Like it's the employees are
yeah,
really the ones that tend to be the happiest. And we're like, hey, we've got a new tool that's automating this whole thing now. This is how we're going to build it out so that you no longer have to do this manual data migration every day. It's
yeah. On the
like,
flip side, I think there's two interesting things there. One, I don't think owners are at the point, nor should they be, where they understand the value of how AI could benefit both them, their employees, and also their customers.
mm-hmm,
And I think employees might be hesitant to volunteer the use of it for fear that they're going to take
they'll get
themselves out of a
redundant.
job.
Yeah, yeah,
And the reality is, like, it won't. There's
yeah,
always more to do.
yeah.
There's always a better experience you could provide. There's
Mm-hmm,
always a better use of your time. And I do believe AI is going to replace some jobs, or let me rephrase. I believe AI is going to make some jobs redundant.
mm-hmm.
Um, but it's going to create opportunities to do something different or for that to evolve, right? And you could even look at the software developer of today, right? The software developer of today needs to know deep code, needs to be able to think through different workflows and processes. And the developer of tomorrow isn't going to have to write so much code, but is going to be thinking more about the process, the workflow, and the experience, and relying on AI to write the code.
Yeah,
Right. So the most technical of jobs right now is evolving as we speak. And
yeah,
the best developer of today will not look like the best developer of next year. They'll have
yeah,
a totally different skill set.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think as a firm owner, because this is something that impacts my firm as well. Like we're making a lot of tech improvements and things, and my mentality with my team is just I'm always trying to have people on my team who are interested in learning. We're in a very dynamic firm environment and we're always trying to level up, and I'm looking for people who want to level up, and I want to mentor them and help them level up. And so for all of us, AI is just an opportunity. And I think if you have I think most of the advisor firms that I talk to, they have a very similar mindset of just great. Like if I can make this admin person twice as efficient, we've now built some excess capacity for them to go tackle these special projects. Now we've built this excess capacity so I can grow into the next 50 households and we're not going to have to make another hire and onboard somebody. Awesome.
Right.
So having that kind of a, mindset of great, we've just bought back more capacity. And also this person is not having to work on, you know, redundant, low value work. They can actually be doing things that are probably more interesting for them and are going to
Yeah.
help them level up. Is a real improvement. But I think definitely being able to communicate that down to your team of, hey, this is what we're trying to do. If we can all find more efficiencies, awesome. Something that I do in my firm is like we have a profit share program, because I'm like, hey, if we can like drive things better
Right.
internally and we can make this thing more efficient, I want you guys to get upside on that. And so then they're not thinking, oh, well, if I'm able to automate 50% of my job now they're gonna, try to
Right.
get rid of me. It's like, okay, no, great. Now we've just built the capacity for like, well, what more can we do? Like how more can you drive? Like how more can we
Right.
push this? So definitely having that kind of a mindset too really, I think, helps the employees get on board too with just wanting to make the same improvements that you are, and having that efficiency mindset of like, let's actually make this thing better together,
Yeah.
and not being defensive of their paperwork ways, which is something I encounter in my industry a lot.
Well, along those lines, there's one point that I want to bring up. I think here's one of the most interesting things I think about AI. I think with AI, the smaller firms have an opportunity to become innovation leaders.
Absolutely. Way more nimble.
Exactly. They're more
Yep.
nimble and they can move forward while the larger firms are still trying to figure out, are we allowed to use this? Can we make this
Yeah.
happen? What will it take? They're
Yep.
still in the planning and discussion stages. Smaller REAs can start wowing their customers, doing things more efficiently,
Yeah.
and really, really can take advantage of this period in time where there's a pretty massive technology shift going on.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. No,
If
I
you're a
see that in
small
my
RIA,
industry
now's
too.
the time.
Yeah, no, seriously, because it can, it can give you the opportunity to outcompete bigger outlets, if you're able to find those efficiencies where it's like, yeah, you can run smaller teams and do higher AUM and deliver better client outcomes, and you're a nimble, lean organization at the same time. Like I've seen practices do that, internally, where it's like they're able to really beef up what they're doing profit wise, just because they're able to get rid of a lot of the administrative burden. And instead of them having to hire on more people to support as they're growing the number of households, they're basically able to just buy back capacity, and
That's
keep things
exactly
really
right.
smooth for the clients, which is great. Yeah. So for the advisors who are interested in getting into your world, James, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. Well, certainly LinkedIn. Would love to connect person to person on LinkedIn and schedule some time to chat. But otherwise, my two websites, we have the cantwelladvisory.com and wealthtechselect.com.
I love it. Yeah. So for those of you listening, we'll put those links nearby wherever you are, so you can go say hello to James. Anything we didn't hit today that you'd like to mention, or maybe some closing thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, I'll use this as an opportunity for a quick promo for WealthTech
Go
Select.
for it.
So WealthTech Select was just launched in November. It's a platform that is perfect for your clientele, Catherine. It's to help RIAs select the right technology to get rid of that analysis paralysis and to be able to work with a WealthTech Select team member to help them decide, is now the right time to make a change, or could I do something different? Could I use some integration, no code, low code stuff within compliance, right, to run my practice more efficiently without maybe changing CRMs or implementing a new portfolio management platform? So this is a great place for all RAs to start their journey to figure out what's next for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great platform, just because I know even on my industry side of things, you go around talking to sales reps, they don't actually understand your business super well, or like their incentive is to try to sell you product rather than finding the solution, which is the actual thing that you need. So that's great that you've built that platform for them. I hope people will go check it out. And
Me too.
yeah, so for the advisors listening on this, I want to
Yeah.
thank you guys for listening. James, thanks for coming on the show. I'm always interested to hear feedback. So if you are an advisor listening to this, I'd love to hear what you thought about the episode, any thoughts that you have, for future episodes, and the challenges that you're facing in your firm when it comes to tech. But so this was another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. And I want to thank you all for joining and listening.
Great. Thanks, Catherine, for having me.